Hello, we are South Wales Victim Focus. We are the primary provider of emotional and practical support to the victims of all crime across South Wales. South Wales Victim Focus can accept referrals directly from victims themselves or from third-party agencies, but we're set up to be the main support service available to officers within South Wales Police when it comes to ensuring the victims of crime receive the support that they need. The following slides aim to set out the scope of our service, what we can do, who benefits from our service, and also to bust some myths that exist about our service. We hope that following this short session, you'll feel more confident and comfortable about referring the victims of crime to us for support. So let's take a look at the benefits to you as officers of South Wales Police. Reduced demand. When we allocate a victim focus officer to the case, there is a new point of contact who will advocate for the victim, explain processes, interpret messages or updates that they may not understand. And importantly, we will be the point of liaison with you as the case progresses. Time shows that this support significantly bypasses the need for victims to continuously ring for updates or with questions that we can deal with. Next, we're an independent provision. We can commence or continue support with a victim even if their case is NFA'd or if they withdraw their complaint. Both of these outcomes would not necessarily mean that they're not impacted physically or psychologically by their experience, and so access and support can be paramount to helping them move beyond their experience. Being independent, South Wales Victim Focus will support the victims of crime even if they have chosen not to report to the police. Moving along, managing expectations. So this in many ways links into the reduced demand benefit we've just covered, but managing a victim's expectations does run deeper. For many, being the victim of crime can feel very personal, isolating, and the tendency for a victim may be that you as a police officer should solely dedicate all of yourself and all of your time to solving their crime. We know it's not always possible to live up to these expectations. Rest days, competing priorities, and delays in the investigative process can mean that things don't move as quickly as our victim would hope. So our team understand the challenges you face and can take the time to set out realistic expectations in terms of receiving contact from you to provide updates or to arrange for statements to be taken, for example. This is proven to limit frustration and minimise the temptation for them to place pressure on the system, chasing updates or complaining about a lack of contact. So let's look now at partnership working. So we feel there's already a great strength in our joined up approach to supporting victims. Open lines of communication between our teams bring benefit to victims at the sharp edge of our work. Whilst in the background, senior officers and victim-focused managers continuously strive to find ways to improve outcomes for victims of crime. The example provided here around making joint visits to victims is something that has worked well in the past, both in terms of the partnership between us and as a more direct support intervention for victims. We would be keen to reinstate this approach to supporting victims across all BCUs, and would be pleased to discuss it with you guys further. Finally, on this slide, we consider the potential outcome. The journey from experiencing crime to securing a positive outcome in the form of a prosecution can be harrowing for any victim. The focus of our caseworker will be to keep the victim resilient, positive, and supported to stay in the process. We provide information and guidance on how the CPS function operates and their rights and what to expect in court, including signposting to specialist support and then beyond the trial if necessary, depending on that victim's needs. Next, the question, referral or not? So this slide looks at eligibility for support. We get a number of referrals coming through for people whose primary support need is not linked to the crime, or where there is still a question mark over whether they sit within the scope of our service or not. So let's look first at those victims of crime that our service will support. So we're a multi-crime agency, which means that we support the victims of all crime types, including standard and medium domestic abuse, sexual violence, fraud, antisocial behaviour, and violent or weaponised crime. We only take referrals for high-risk domestic abuse if there is evidence of stalking-related behaviours. Linked to this point, we support victims of both intimate and non-intimate stalking through our specialist service called Path to Safety. This team is a standalone service but is very much dedicated to the partnership with South Wales Police to improve outcomes for stalking victims. We support children and young people who are victims of crime. There are increasing numbers of young people coming into our service, and we aim to support them in the most age-appropriate and effective way that we can. Young people under the age of 16 are supported indirectly via their parent or a trusted adult, and then, if the young person is over 16, we're able to look at direct support. Next, witnesses or those indirectly affected are also eligible for support, particularly where the crime has been particularly traumatic or relates to an individual close to them. Moving down, we consider the impacts of historical crime on victims. More and more victims are finding the courage or the platform to disclose historic crimes against them, and the trauma of past events is scarcely diluted with age, and the need for our support can be as important as it is for any victim. When a crime is NFA'd or even not reported to the police, it does not mean that there is not a victim who may be suffering the impacts and in need of support to move forward with their life. Victim Focus will continue to offer support to victims if either of these circumstances apply. So moving across to the red zone, we can learn about scenarios where an individual would not sit within the scope of our service. So firstly, non-crime cases. Quite often we receive referrals from call-outs where there has not been a crime committed, but it is considered that an implicated person may need support. The most common cases revolve around mental health crisis and the need for support resulting. We've also been tasked on referral to support people with applications linked to immigration or child contact, and our teams have also been asked to provide advice on relationships and to become involved in civil disputes. None of these scenarios are within the scope of our service, nor the skill set of our team. Referrals received for these types of intervention will be rejected and returned at screening. Next, victims need to live in the South Wales Police area to be eligible for support. We cover all 3 BCU areas and have staff ready to support victims anywhere across the patch. So moving along is eligibility around sudden death or suicide. Whether a family members or close friends of someone lost to sudden unexpected death or suicide, we are unable to provide support, unfortunately. But if the death is related to a road death, we have a separate service within South Wales to support those closest to the bereaved. If the death turns out to be a homicide, again we have a separate team to support those in need. Now we can take a look at victims referred in to us who are known to be under investigation as the alleged perpetrator in the same occurrence. We will not support the victim at this stage until the ongoing investigation is concluded and they are cleared of any suspicion. And finally, linked to the above, where a victim is deemed to be making a false or counter allegation, the same logic would apply, whereby we would want due process to clear them of any suspicion of perpetration. So, having looked at eligibility for support, we'll now consider what's on offer to victims and, as importantly, what we are unable to offer. So starting on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see a list of support offered to victims depending on support needs, on their ongoing risk, or the need for longer-term support. So emotional support, reassurance and validation. This is a chance for the victim to talk about their experience, to understand and process the events, and to be reassured that they will be okay. This cannot be underestimated as a source of hope and comfort for victims. Next, risk management and safety planning. We use recognised risk management tools such as the 5 critical questions, the DASH and the S-DASH to measure the risk that victims are exposed to. When we know the risk, we can take the right action to keep vulnerable people safe. Our team of victim care officers will usually complete the risk assessments at the initial contact stage and then agree safety plans with victims, which are reviewed with our victim focus officers in the longer term. Advocacy is possibly the biggest part of the victim focus officer role. Liaising with police, health, housing and any other agency involved in the case, our team gain updates and interpret messages for victims of crime at a time when everything can feel confusing and difficult to handle. Now let's look at the CPS. For many victims of crime, the journey from experiencing crime through the process of investigation and in particular the CPS and court process can be traumatic, exhausting, and without support will often lead to attrition or withdrawal from the process. Our victim focus officers provide vital support in explaining how the process will work, in securing updates, and in signposting to specialist support such as the witness service. Our teams will even accompany the victim to court on the day if necessary. Practical support. This is often what makes a difference in the aftermath of a crime. In the examples here, victim focus will be able to issue low-cost security items such as personal alarms, dummy CCTV cameras, or window and door alarms to victims who may be feeling vulnerable in their own home, for instance. And whilst such practical support can never make a victim immune to a repeat event, these items can add an extra layer of security to how they feel. Next, we recommend that you always explain to victims of crime that as well as being independent of South Wales Police, our services are free, they're always confidential and without a time constraint, meaning we can support the victims on their terms for as long as they feel necessary. Lastly on this list, Victim Focus will deliver its services across South Wales in the way that our service user is most comfortable. Most commonly, we support people over the telephone, but in terms of ensuring we are accessible to all people, we can adapt our services to meet any specific needs linked to language or disability. We'll also offer face-to-face support to service users where it's requested. So now let's take a look at some of the things that we are unable to do or to offer within the service. So supporting victims in the pursuance of legal or civil actions is not something that we would engage in as part of our support of a victim of crime. Whilst we accept that this can be a consequence of crime, it is not an area of expertise for us, and we always feel that the victim is better supported by a specialist in those matters. We would always look to signpost on in these cases. Next, matters of health. We're having increasing numbers of referrals where the occurrence detail has requested support because of mental health crisis or escalated risk or vulnerability linked to conditions such as dementia. These referrals often do not relate to the impacts of crime and therefore sit outside the scope of our service. But the message here, of course, is that wherever a victim of crime requests support but happens to have associated health vulnerabilities, we can support them and will work hard to access the specialist help they need with those conditions, as well as supporting them with the impacts resulting from their experience of crime. Moving on, this is a revisit of the previous slide where we informed that we do not support high-risk domestic abuse. Our IDVA service ended in April 2024 and we will now only accept a referral categorised as high risk if there are clear signs of stalking associated with the crime. This would then be handled by our Path to Safety stalking support team. The next point looks specifically to referral quality and where a referral form is received without all necessary data or incorrect information which prevents us from making contact. In these instances, we are forced to reject referrals and return them to the referring officer for correction. Victim focus do not have access to niche and are therefore unable to access case notes to identify missing or incorrect data. In these cases, it can delay the time taken to contact a victim in need of support. This slide looks at why your referral makes all the difference. This is an amended version of an actual referral. We've redacted the referrer details and changed the name of the victim and her daughter. When this referral came in, it stated only that the mother, Jane, was finding it difficult to process her daughter's choice of new boyfriend. Notably, the occurrence type or crime classification had not been completed. This referral on another day would not have got past our screening process as there was no apparent crime and no apparent victim. One of our team became curious and went back to the referring officer to check for more detail and to dig a little bit deeper. And then the referral form was resubmitted with the whole story, more than likely as it appeared on niche. And you can see the difference for yourself. There's prolonged sexual exploitation of a person with limited capacity, a mother not knowing where to turn for support, and a mother becoming a victim of aggression in her own home from her own daughter. So the transformation between version 1 and version 2 in this case is the difference between support being offered to a victim or not, purely because of eligibility. Apparently, the referring officer understood that we had access to niche and we would become informed of all the detail as a matter of course through the system. But we don't have access to that, so it's vital that all the information regarding any case that is being referred to us is told on that form at the point of referral. So here are the contact details for referring into South Wales Victim Focus. Depending on the BCU in which you are based, your referral form should be directed as shown here. You'll also see at the bottom the inbox address for Path to Safety should you wish to make a referral direct to the Stalking Support Service. Incidentally, you are welcome to email any queries or other communications into these inboxes as they are regularly monitored. On the right, you can see our direct dial telephone number should you wish to use that instead. So that concludes our presentation. Today we covered how our service can benefit you, is your referral eligible for our support, how do we support victims of crime and what are the limitations on that support, the importance of a good and detailed referral, and how you can contact us. If you have any questions or would like to meet one of our team, don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you for listening.